welcome everyone, Trailblazer Society, for tuning into this webinar on trail construction basics and maintenance, something that Tom feels deeply about, and he has a lot of experience building trails, maintaining trails, planning trails, trails with a capital T. Tom has been with Rails to Trails for over 30 years. He has predominantly been working in PA and on the East Coast. But that's not the limit of Tom's work. There's a lot that Tom has done and continues to do. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? And then I have a question for you to start us down this road of trails.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'm located 100 miles west of Philadelphia. In Pennsylvania, in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, and I've been here for 32 years this month. And I'm the director of the Northeast office, which is the 10 Northeast states, New England, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. And I'm the lead for maintenance issues and also resiliency. And I wanted to share with you today some of the things that we're learning and trying to pass on to trail groups.
Great. Thanks, Tom. We are set for 30 minutes, but I got a feeling we'll either hit it right on the dot or go over, just as a fair warning. So Tom, I wanted to start the conversation by asking you a question. I grew up with, my father was a machinist. All my uncles were machinists. They made things for companies out of metal and plastics, and they lived and died by the rule, measure twice, cut once. What is the trail building equivalent to measure twice, cut once, if you could expound on that?
Interesting thought. I think it's probably the close association would be when determining what type of surface you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to drill down on that question a lot. That is the number one, I'd say, issue that does not get enough attention. It seems like it would be obvious that you really have to spend a lot of time analyzing that. Mm-hmm. But we find more and more that hasn't been done.
Do you think that the importance of trail maintenance is something you thought about more, or you think about more now, or because of hindsight being 2020, or is it something that at the beginning of your career you were really advocating for?
I guess in the beginning I was, but just because I've been around for 3 decades plus, I have had the opportunity to pass by trails and visit them again and go, I was here 10 years ago, I was here 20 years ago, I was here 30 years ago, and this looks really different. Is it the trail has gone through its life cycle? 30 years is pretty short. Has there been deferred maintenance? Yeah, there's been some of that, even though trail managers do a great job. And then what were maybe some of the periodic maintenance issues that should have been done in the routine that aren't done? And I've seen shortened life cycles for sure. And sometimes that's a combination of poor design, not enough money, or going back to what you said in the beginning, not really measuring accurately.
Well, that kind of leads into the basics of trail construction, I guess. Money, planning. Is there anything else you would add into that equation when getting a trail started off the ground?
Yeah, well, you just have as many stakeholders and users in the room as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Make sure the trail gets used, I guess, right?
Well, I guess, I think there's been some trails that have been built and then expectations were greater, although we've seen some trails just not work.
Hmm.
But that's really a slim amount.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, even thinking of, I think most people on this call probably know that RTC does mapping trips where we go out and truth trails across the country. Actually, coming from your work in PA, you can speak a little bit about that. If I don't know if you have the book on your shelf to your right over there, but the only trails I ever encountered where they weren't really getting used at all were trails that suffered from like really bad erosion, or maybe were put in places where the elements just couldn't be held back. I'm thinking about a specific trail that we did outside of, I guess it was like King of Prussia, and it just kept getting flooded and flooded and flooded out. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of your trail mapping, the books? Because I thought that was an interesting anecdote.
Oh, well, I mean, that's more of a user issue, and I can grab it off the shelf. The first one I did in 92. Came here in late 91, and I did one in 92. That I forget how many in here, maybe 40 trails, 50 trails, just for Pennsylvania. And then every year I did that, but then we went to this got too thick, and we dropped some of them out and went to another type of book, and then we went regional, things like that.
Yeah. So you mentioned, some of the trails coming back 10 plus years later and seeing things that have happened to them. I know that a lot of what you've been focusing on as of lately, or talking about in regards to maintenance, has been tree roots. Do you want to expand on that a little bit? Because tree roots, as someone who's ridden some of the local trails in Philadelphia,
right,
they're bumpity bump bump bump, and you're lucky if someone spray paints so you can see that it's coming up ahead of you. If not, it's a good old jarring feeling.
There's a little bit of there's too much of a tendency to think of asphalt as modern, and it doesn't help that the alternatives have such names as stone dust and natural. And people don't understand what that means, but we all understand what asphalt is. We're on it in our cars, but we do jump sometimes to that and think, oh, we can include all users if we do that, except maybe for equestrians. Although you could build something off the side for equestrians, but I've seen a tendency for that to happen. And if you're on a well canopied tree trail with a tree canopy, and you're on an asphalt trail, and that's relatively new, hopefully there was an arborist who analyzed those trees and what types of tree roots they have, and the soil, and where is the water source, and what is the sub base, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so that those roots do not push up the asphalt. That's our number one problem right now. Asphalt trails that with some seal coating every 10 years and some of them haven't even done that, and they're still holding up very well. You should be able to get 20, 30 more years easily out of an asphalt trail, but we're seeing sometimes in 4 years a 3/4 inch root can create a crack. Water gets in, even if you would seal that temporarily. If the roots aren't taken care of in the beginning, then we find that some trails are being rebuilt in a periodic circumstance, and that's almost routine, or at least periodic, and then that's getting folded into the maintenance budget. and it makes it seem like trails are more expensive than they are to maintain. And unfortunately, some of that have gotten into the literature, and it just doesn't have to be that way. There's a few different things we could do to the tree roots. One was a workshop. We did a webinar a year ago on it, but then we wanted to take it in the field. And we did it up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, with a couple of urban foresters who gave us some really good ideas about. And we got our hands into the dirt and worked the equipment and everything. And it was a real good learning experience. And I'd like to do more of those around the Northeast, if not around the country.
Is that what you were just discussing? Is that from the video that you were mentioning?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to show that video and discuss it a little?
Okay.
All right. Let me cue it up.
Yeah. There it is.
All right. Well, let's see here. Can you see that, Tom?
Yep. Not yet.
Sorry about that. There you go, Tom. Is that visible to you?
Yeah. Great. Yeah, this was in Scranton, Pennsylvania. There's some music, but we cut that out. Thank you for doing that, Jorge. So I could kind of talk over it. But this was a collaboration of those groups you just saw. This kind of grew out of a Pennsylvania Trail Conference that I presented at in terms of maintenance, and there was a field part of that, and I convinced this trail group that it doesn't have an extensive problem with tree roots, but there are areas, and it's a trail that has various surfaces. And that's the way you want to think about trails. We shouldn't think of a 10-mile trail having just one surface, because landscapes change, density of population change as you go through the landscape. So you need to be flexible and not just be consistent in your surface type just for consistency's sake. It has to have a goal. This is actually a volunteer who ran this machine. This was $400 for a half a day, I think it was. Very, very inexpensive. You can use a cloth root barrier, or you can use that panel that was just shown, and it doesn't have a biocide in it. If perhaps next to an active railroad, or you're in an area with really, really invasive, tough plants, you might want to use a biocide that's embedded in the plastic or in the cloth that you'd put down. For this day, we used the plastic, which maybe is a little easier to use because it doesn't fold. But if you have enough hands, it's not a big deal. But it went very quickly. We actually thought that we were going to need 2 days to do this, one to do the trenching, and then another day to do the other work. And we came back the second day and said, oh, geez, we could have got this done all in 1 day. So really what you're showing here is about 100 feet of 100 feet of trail. Yeah, I skipped ahead a little bit, but you can see those are the panels, the plastic rigid panel. And we had a dozen people from various municipal park agencies from the area. So it's something you can do easily with volunteers. This gentleman is who's leading most of it. Vince from Penn State Cooperative Agriculture is Cooperative Extension, excuse me, is an urban forester, and We've also worked in New Jersey with Rutgers and their urban forester. I'd like to do some of these workshops there as well in New Jersey, because they do have a lot of asphalt trails, and they do have some of them that are failing because of the lack of a root barrier. So there it is, and then we trim that off, but it's important to have it slightly above the soil line and the trail height, just so the roots don't pop over. But it would create a problem in terms of tripping or anything. That was after it was cut. Yep. Oh, okay. Here's some of the stats. 240 linear feet. Yeah, twice what I said.
Well, thanks, Tom, for sharing that. We did have a question. I mean, you did toss around a few numbers there, but they're pretty small numbers, $600. Someone asked, how much does regular maintenance generally cost per mile annually?
Wow. That is a tough one. Because a lot of people have a different definition of maintenance. Is it everything from life cycle, as I mentioned, or deferred, which we shouldn't be, periodic, routine? Does it include sometimes operation, management, and maintenance? A lot of times you'll see that all stuff together. So I've been trying, especially in the last 5 years or so, to get a better idea about that. And I think I shared with you a table that's available on our website in our toolbox under maintenance, basic maintenance. And I reached out, and it was difficult to get these numbers from the various trail managers, be they volunteers. Maybe were the easiest if they kept records, but getting it from a city or a regional park agency or a federal agency or something like that is difficult, because they say, oh, it's part of a much bigger budget, and budgets don't really tell you everything. You really need the routine costs first. Those things that you do once a year. That's routine, at least once a year. Sometimes you do something once, sometimes you do it 365 days a year, but that's your first base level. Then you can build and understand what everything else is. And it's hard to get that. The best, so you can also think about this in terms of inflation and the best data is the number of hours it takes to do something. Okay, that doesn't inflate. You can apply different wages to that. You can also factor in the cost of material and equipment in that. But can you put that up on the screen? I can share with people.
Yeah, I have it queued up here. And
I'll go through. There were 6 different states that I reached out to with trails, and a few of the trail managers were actually really eager to share what they know. I tried to get a range from an asphalt to a stone dust. There's a concrete trail in there, and it somewhat is what we thought. Now, again, these are routine costs, but you can see one in Western Pennsylvania. Maybe we have some viewers on from Western PA today. Sometimes they would know their visitation rates because they have infrared counters. But here's one that basically we're talking around $2,400 per mile. Now, that includes the volunteer hours.
Okay.
Your hours is not a cost, but it's a value. And if it wasn't there, the cost per mile would have to be covered. So I include them, and we have some really fantastic, and I don't think the public really knows how much percentage of maintenance is done by volunteers, but quite often they're very skilled people. We're far from just giving a paintbrush and a poker to somebody and saying, here, pick up trash or paint that wall and you'll be good. It's very, very sophisticated groups. I love working with them.
Yeah, I mean, someone operating heavy machinery or being an arborist is a pretty cost-saving skill.
That's different. And sometimes they will go get their chainsaw accreditation, sometimes they'll get some more training. Sometimes that trail group could pay for that. And I think in terms of maintenance, because it's it's hard to come by maintenance dollars quite often. We love to build things. We love to say to the federal government, state government, okay, give me money to acquire it, to plan it, design it, build it. Oh, I want maintenance money too, and that's just not the way it's going to work. So we're going to have to rely more on volunteers. So that's one. I parceled them out so we could build this table here. Here's one on the east of Pennsylvania. They're not all Pennsylvania, but this is $2,500. No volunteer hours. They don't have a volunteer corps for this section of the Delaware and Lehigh. There's other sections of the Delaware and Lehigh, and that basically goes from almost Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, just south of Scranton, Pennsylvania, along the Lehigh and the Delaware River all the way to Philadelphia. But this section does not have. And you can see some of the, I've also included the level of amenities. So amenities is the things that kind of could break, picnic bench, a bollard, those kinds of things, the toilet, gates, fences, kiosks, signs, all that. Those are under amenities. And I should say, most of the four categories that I bundle routine maintenance under is surface and structures, vegetation, amenities, and then sort of a catch-all for cleanliness, litter, dumping, and trash pickup.
Would parking lots fall under amenities, Tom?
What's that?
Parking lots for trails, for trailheads?
That would be more of the kiosks there yet, yes, but the surface and structures, that would be where the parking lot would fall under. Here's one somewhat Western PA, but not quite as far as the Armstrong, even less expensive. No volunteer corps, although I do know, because this was the first trail in Pennsylvania when money became, maybe in the nation, when money became available to build trails through what was called ISTEA, Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act. That was the act that was the sea change for rail trail building and bike and ped that passed in late '91. And it was the volunteers who pushed to get this trail built using that funding. Now you might hear of it called Transportation Alternatives, or TASA.
We go to the next one.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. This is all Pennsylvania, isn't it? Okay. Yeah. I do have. Shoot. I do have. This is really live, isn't it? These are all Pennsylvania examples. I apologize. I had some from Nebraska and the state of Washington. And
I think that one lives on the maintenance site on the RTC website.
Good.
Can you discuss this? The 6,764 jump?
Yeah, so that went up. That's a little more of a suburban trail. That was partially what we just saw in the video, a section of this longer corridor a little to the north. This is in the Scranton area again, and they have a high level of amenities which need care and replacement. They even have 6 sites. Let's see, yeah, they do have sites for picking up trash. They have receptacles for that, and they do a lot of volunteer work, which is great because this is a very community-oriented trail. It's hard to go throughout this that length and not see a house, for example.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the, my local trail, which gets a lot of usage, gets flooded out quite a bit near Center City, Philadelphia, and I can't imagine the price that they're paying for some of that. I did want to ask you, because of time, I don't want to go over too much. Trails and asphalt. I want to circle back to asphalt again, especially because we had a question from someone. They had, I'm just going to read it to recap. I've seen on some trails, there's milling on the surface to remove tree roots. It leaves a rough scar a few inches wide by length, but eliminates the bump. Do you know what it is? How hard is it to do it? And what are the equipment costs involved?
Um, I think if I understand the question, removing the couple inches of the asphalt trail to reconstitute them, sometimes adding a binder. When you do that, you may expose a root and cut it, or you may just scar it. It would be nice to get a clean cut. Put something like Tarlon on the end that will retard future growth. But again, the best thing, if that is exposed, you should go in there and trench that. You'll see sometimes patchwork on trails where a root did crack through, and that's good to do. But again, that's after the fact. I think that's what the gentleman or lady is referring to.
Mm-hmm. I did have you sent me some photos, and I'm looking at time. I don't know if we'll have enough time to do the this segment, but Tom, you want me to open some of those?
Sure. Yeah, just do some random stuff.
Let's see here, just so people have a visual. All right. There you go. Can you see that?
Yeah, this was kind of a unique one in New Hampshire. This is the Cotton Valley Trail. This is a unique trail because it's really been promoted by railroad enthusiasts who still like once or twice to run a small train along this tracks. And it's unique because they built inside the rail. Sometimes they'll hop over depending on the landscape, but this is through a very wet area. This was after a very, very hard rain, and this was the only area you'll see there, and it's maybe a quarter-inch deep. That'll probably evaporate pretty quickly. But I really enjoyed myself. It's the only one I've seen like this, but it makes sense. And for maintenance, it's very straightforward because you can service that area from the maintenance train as you were, and get to it easily. That circus is really nicely packed. Here's a corridor, and you don't really, here's an asphalt trail, and you don't really see that many big trees. I could have included other pictures, but the trees aren't real close, but some of them may be new trees, others that are still sending out roots, and you can see what will happen. So in this case, too often we are digging all that out at a high cost of money, and not putting in root barriers, and that's coming back in 4 or 5 years. Here's a patch job. It would be better to nip that root off. Hopefully that was done. Put in a root barrier on the right, make a wider patch that's a little too narrow, and then go all the way across. Another way is if you the root barrier can't be done in the beginning, is to make a deeper subsurface so the root will stay lower, and have a more open rock, so the root can get up, and perhaps it wants to go left and find a water source.
Another example of root damage.
Massachusetts, this is a rail with trail. There's a fence between the two. This is the county planner I'm with, and these are especially difficult, rail with trail, when there's an active line next to an active trail, because quite often the railroad, when they're doing their herbicides, they won't quite reach the fence line. And so you get quite often a invasive that's tough to control. You keep cutting it back. You cut it, you spray it from maybe this side, the trail manager. But if you can get the railroad to go right up to the fence and maybe a little bit beyond, you can take care of that invasive species.
And how easy is it to work with railroad companies on this type of maintenance? Like,
not easy.
I asked because I had sent you that email from a supporter where the railroad clear cut a big chunk of the trail side, eliminating basically a tree canopy, and the railroad company didn't tell anyone they were doing that to the trail. I think it was Amtrak.
Not surprising. They aren't cooperative quite often, especially the class 1, the class 2, class 3, and transit are more cooperative. They're more community based. Oh, this is just I was cutting the root barrier with a reciprocating saw, and it went quite quickly. So that was that video I showed you.
Yep. I'm gonna check for any other questions if anybody wants to type one in. Just review this really quick. In New York, they used to cut tree roots that lifted sidewalks. Storms then blew the trees over into houses or cars. Now they won't cut roots, but have to raise or narrow the sidewalk. Cutting roots can be dangerous with storms. That's true. I mean, I've ridden parts of the C&O and the Maryland rail corridor or rail trail, Western Maryland rail trail. And when there's big storms, the trees just kind of fall all over the trail. You want to address this one, Tom?
Say that question one more time.
New York City used to cut tree roots that lifted up sidewalks, but now they can't, and now they fall into houses and cars. They're dangerous. Cutting roots can be dangerous with storms. Can you talk a little bit about that? If you're cutting the roots of some of these trees, I guess, how much of a concern is it for falling on trails?
That's again having an arborist look at the trees. I've been at many trails where a tree actually fell, not even during the wind or a heavy snow. So the forest is an active place. You should look for those dead trees, and if they can reach the trail, you might want to take them down. Although they're great habitat for woodpeckers, all kinds of other animals. So you do need those trees for that. But it depends on what else is on the other side of that tree. If there's asphalt over there, that's an issue. You can't really compare trails and sidewalks. They're different entities. Sidewalks do not have trucks on them. Trails have trucks on them for maintenance and things like that. So the soil type, et cetera, the type of tree, Some do really well with construction and like ginkgo trees, very hardy, used in sycamores, used in urban settings, that kind of thing.
I have someone has a question about volunteer hours for the Lehigh Trail. That is a Pennsylvania trail. I think you are familiar with it. Do you know of how to get involved in volunteer hours for that trail? Or I guess as a closing question, what would be the best way to be a volunteer for your local trail?
Well, the one to our site, if you, or you can just Google Lehigh, the DNL, Lehigh and Delaware Greenway or Rail Trail, and you'll get to that website, and you can ask the folks there, hey, what sections need volunteers? They may not know that because this is a 165-mile corridor from Wilkes-Barre to Philadelphia. So that small staff in Easton doesn't know every section, but they have a pretty good handle. They can put you in touch with somebody that may have a volunteer corps. So that's the best way to do it. Just get the name of the group, go through TrailLink, which is our trail finder, or you can just Google it.
Thanks for the mentioning trail links, fresh on the mind after our presentation at the staff meeting yesterday. 90 million trail users echoing to TrailLink, which is a number that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But I do want to thank the dozen or so people that stuck on, even though we went over time. Tom, do you have any closing comments about maintenance or condition or construction before we head into the holiday weekend?
No, I'd be fine to stay on if anybody wants to. And I like this stuff, and I've seen the cycle. So it's apparent to me, maybe more than others, what needs to happen. But we're in challenging times now with climate change, and we need to build our trails not just so they're more resilient with bigger culverts, with better bases, and thinking through the surfaces, but we also need to not exacerbate climate change. Unfortunately, when we have asphalt trails, we need to balance that because they create heat domes, and their use in suburban and rural areas, really needs to be thought through, because we have 40,000 miles of multi-purpose trails in America now. I don't know, and this is something that Rails to Trails Conservancy get a better handle on, although many trails are different surfaces. I don't know what percent is asphalt, but a lot are. And we don't want to add to, paving the earth over. So,
yeah, I put the photo up that you sent me from earlier of the washout trail.
This is actually in Vermont. I was up there 2 weeks ago, and Vermont Agency of Transportation, VTrans, was nice enough to let me ride along with their rail trail manager. They're the first state DOT to have a rail trail manager, and she has a team. And Jackie was showing me their catastrophic washouts that they had July 12th. 11th and 12th in Vermont. This is northern Vermont. This is the longest rail trail was for 4 days before it was washed out in New England, 93 miles, reaching the Canadian border up by New York, and then in the southeast direction going towards New Hampshire, not quite reaching that. And I'm working on the extension into New Hampshire, but this was just one of the blowouts.
And this was from that flooding that we saw on the evening news
of flooding.
Now,
and that's even the most dramatic one.
Now, maintenance wise, would a state like Vermont have this in their budget, or is this something that people are thinking about now?
Well,
seeing this type of flooding, this type of
this is again, is this maintenance or is this rebuilding? This is sort of rebuilding. When they rebuild, will they put in a bigger culvert? Maybe. They even lowered the profile of a trail in a river valley to its original profile that was 150 or more years ago. just to let the water go where it needs to go.
Mhm.
They were putting in bigger and bigger culverts and it still didn't work. So they said, let's just let it flood. And sometimes it will be close, but we're not going to have a catastrophic blowout. And other times they're not able to say put on a crushed stone surface because that would wash away. They don't really want to put down more asphalt because that's a impervious layer that exacerbates flooding. So they sort of have a grass dirt type thing, and that's worked well in some areas where you just kind of really go back to Mother Nature and read the landscape and follow it.